Our next reader is no stranger to me. I've known this lady for a very long time now. It says she was generally born in the Borders, lived here all her life, and has come to specialise in first-person narratives, sometimes in Border Scots, and found that poetry had become increasingly visual. Was privileged to have had Tom Leonard as her tutor at Glasgow University, lucky lady, and at one point won the Macallan short story competition. But that feels like a long time ago, she says. It doesn't, but it feels like a long time ago to when we used to belong to a poetry group together, didn't we? And Dorothy is the only lady who's given me a lift home in a white Mercedes. Today, Dorothy will perform a selection of short monologues. Give a big round of applause for Mrs. Dorothy Alexander.
Just sit down, actually. Hi. I would just like to say an appreciation for everyone who has ever worked on the Eildon Tree and who still does. And I'd also, as Julian just did, make a special mention of Tom Bryan. There's a lot of writers in the Borders, not least me, who owe him a great debt of gratitude. And I mean, we probably wouldn't be here today if it hadn't been, for him at some point. So I'm going to read a few monologues in Scots, and this felt appropriate given the moment that we're in, the tumultuous times, as we might say. And so I would like you to imagine that you are visiting an aged relative in a care facility. One of those where there is the cliched situation of all the patients seated round the perimeter of the lounge. And then imagine that your attention is drawn to certain individuals, and as you focus on them, you hear the voices of their younger selves speaking to you. I was hurt sair when a man died. He dropped down sudden at the Kelsey show, just dropped down. I was right beside him, just a young man. He gripped at my arm just before he went down. "Oh hen," he said, and down he went. I got sick of shock and never spoke for days. I can't mind the funeral. They said I was in sick a state, I was like a zombie. I never great. I just minded feeling numb. Then something must have happened, for I minded howling for days and nights and all. I can't mind, but even now, I say his name and I get comfort for it. When I say his name, Jock, it's like I'm with him. Just like if I say Ma or Pa or Granny Wilson or Auntie Chrissy. I'm with him. I see them and I mind what it was like to be with them. It's like I'm a bairn again. Curls. It was his baby curls. I found them in a drawer. His mother gave us them no long after he was married. She had them wrapped up in tissue paper inside a square of white velvet that she'd folded round and tied with a ribbon. I was never struck with the kirk. All that sermonising went right over my head. I even got thrown out the Sunday school. I'd just be being a laddie. I'd be being cheeky. The teacher was right po-faced. Her father was the headmaster. I was getting into trouble for swearing. And I was going to speak my mind, and that never goes down well with kirky folk. I loved eating snow. I'd lift up handfuls of it and lap it up. The powdery stuff would just disappear in your mouth, and it was like eating wet nothing. It'd make you cough if you breathed it in or quick, and it'd stick to your face. I like getting a big handful and round it into a ball. I'd crunch it like an apple. My mother would geese a row, tell us I'd get a sore belly, but I didn't care. I just laughed. Mind it didn't half make your hands cold. They'd be real raw. I've seen us about greeting when the heat come back into them. And your wet clays hanging round the mantelpiece, and on the fender, the fire blazing. I liked men, I'll not deny it. Although I never married Jane, and that was when I was young and daft. I soon got shot at him, he was a waster. Christina was his. Then I had Shirley. Her father was an insuranceman. And then a good bit later, I had wee Audrey. Of course, I had a bit of a reputation. When you live in a wee place, that's just natural. But nobody really bothered us. They wouldn't have dared. I worked. I kept my bairns clean, and I wasn't a homewrecker. I never took anybody's man off them. There was only one to let myself get hurt. I would have been in my late 20s by then, and he wasn't through the tune. He came to be the new manager of the store, but through the week he stopped at the hotel I was working in till he could find a house. I suppose he had the gift of the gab. I seemed to have plenty of cash. He took his away-ins. 3 days we had in a guest house in Kendal. I left the bairns with my sister. He was going to leave his wife, and we were going to move to England. But he couldn't do it in the end. She was kind of nervy, and he didn't have it in him to leave her. I never went near a man for a good while after that. Then I got a job in the chemist, and Mr. Sykes, who owned it, was a lovely man. A wee bit older, but awfully nice. And when he became a widower, I was his comfort. He was right good to me. I wanted for nothing. He would have married us, but I tell him I was quite happy the way I was. I liked my independence. And I think there was a bit of him that was glad about that, really. For he liked his peace and quiet. Wee Audrey was his. I've had a way with animals, ever since I was a bairn. There was a time, I'd only be 4 or 5 year old, when I went with my granny to visit her friend Peg that bid at the firm at Caberston. They were blethering in the kitchen when they realised that I wasn't there. My granny said she nearly died when they found us, for I had my arms round Moss, the big collie, and he was a bad-tempered Brit. He was never usually near the house. Peg's man kept him in the shed if he wasn't up the hill. But there was me, my arms round his neck, and they were feared to shout or anything. So the next thing, I'm off across the steam with Moss ahint us like a wee lamb, and them with their mouths hanging open. Just watched. There was a muckle speeder right in the middle of the living room flare. It just stood low to us. But when I got near it, it fair shot away under the settee, so I just left it. I thought I'll get it later on if it comes back out. But with any luck I'll not be seeing it again. Not that I'm feared of them, but they big uns can use the willies. I try not to kill them if I can help it. I usually catch them in my hanky or a tea towel and put them outside. Anything that keeps the fleas down's a friend of mine. I didn't pull their webs down either. At least not for a wee while. My mother says that's just an excuse for lazy buggeritis.